Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Miasin, and again, another advice video because you guys are always down for them, and I'm down to make you happy. So as long as I keep getting that beautiful support that I'm getting every time, well, I'm just gonna keep making these videos. So this time, it's going to be 5 pro tips to make sure that you don't misplay, you play better, you actually win games that you shouldn't win, but at the same time, you were able to capitalize off of your opponent's mistake, or you were able to do like a completely insane, like super heads up move. So the first one is actually going to take advantage of the fact that you can banish your own cards in order to play around this card called by the grave. So a lot of people might not know this, but if you actually use something like a hand trap or whatever and your opponent uses called by the grave, you can actually dodge called by the grave in so many ways. So there is Hakuero in order to, banish a card from either player's graveyard in combination with Eldritch, Eldritch on the field, so Scarlet, Black Awakening, etc. And there's also other cards. So Transmigration Prophecy is a really cool card. It's really flexible because it allows you to target 2 cards in either's graveyard. It doesn't matter. It could be your graveyard, your opponent's graveyard, so it is used as an interruption for your opponent, but also a really good card for yourself. And then there's also cards like Back to the Front, Call of the Haunted, you know the deal, etc. And also there's something else in case you were playing a deck like Thunder Dragon. If you have Thunder Dragon Titan on the field, you can actually discard a Thunder Dragon monster from your hand. The quick effect to try to destroy a card. The card that you will try to destroy, though, is going to be the Titan himself. So the Titan then will use its continuous effect to banish 2 cards from your graveyard and actually protect himself, from being destroyed by a card effect, which is funny because it's trying to destroy yourself and protect himself. So the actual real purpose here is just to banish cards from your graveyard, and since that's exactly what we're doing, the Called by the Grave target is not going to be banished by Called by the Grave, but by something else. Therefore, Called by the Grave will not resolve, and your hand trap like Ash, for example, will resolve, and the Kowloon in this situation is just gonna be absolutely dead. So beautiful. Let's get into advice number 2. Alright, this one, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, it makes me want to cry every single time, and the reason why I'm saying that is because this is exactly the kind of move that made me lose in top 8 of YCS Niagara. And if I just played better, it's actually my fault, by the way. I could have won that game. If I played better, I am 100 billion% confident I would have won the game. And basically, we were in a grind game. It was a Phantasme heavy format, and these are bound to exist again, by the way. So as soon as Virtual World kind of dies off, Phantasme might actually see play in the main deck again. Same thing with like Red Eyes Inside and stuff. If those cards die off, Phantasme is going to be really, really good because so many decks have to link summon. Right now, it's not that good, so this is kind of a niche advice, but in case it becomes good again, you have to learn how to not lose to Phantasme and not give a window of opportunity for your opponent to unbreak. And one thing that I actually realized, we were in like turn 15 or turn 20, and my opponent had 1 card in the hand that always stayed there, and also I didn't really make the correlation between him having the same card in the hand for all those turns and me never link summoning like before. I kind of wanted to be a little too aggressive, and what I did, just to push for damage, not even to make interruptions or to OTK, just for push for damage, I made a Link Karibo that, obviously in this situation, it wasn't relinquished Anima, that was a YCS, and there was not a single YCS that actually had relinquished Anima legal. So I made a Link Karibo and tried to search with Hertz, and then my opponent Phantasmed me, and although I did have the Solemn Strike, that wasn't really good because next turn my opponent top deck Desires into 2 Salamangreat monsters, and I wish I had the Solemn Strike for the Salamangreat monsters instead of having it to waste for a card that I actually could have played around. And you see, what I'm about to do, it's not even like I'm actually going to push for that much. I'm really just gonna make like a Seeger jump over that Phantasme and pass. So it's not like it was that great. Of course, in the context of the YCS, that's actually what I would have done because I didn't have access to Anaconda. Obviously, the Anaconda wasn't a thing yet. In this situation, you could actually make Anaconda into Rampage, but you're still not jumping over that Phantasme. Your opponent was able to draw 1 card pretty much for free. You have so much pressure now, and you gave a chance to your opponent to win, or if you have to waste your strike on this, not ideal. So yeah, just make sure that instead of actually committing to a Link monster summon that just doesn't help you whatsoever, just play it really slow, just summon monsters, set monsters in defense if they don't really have a lot of attack, and then eventually when you know for a fact that you can go for a big push, now go for game. So in this situation, what I should have done is probably just use my monsters as fusion material for Chimera Tech Fortress, or not Mega Fleet but Fortress, and then attack my opponent, poke repeatedly, and then I would have had the strike for his actual engine instead, exactly like I said, instead of using it as against a card that I can actually inherently play around. So that's it for advice number 2. Again, my heart is completely destroyed and crushed by this, because it reminds me that I actually could have won a YCS if I played better. But let's get into the next tip. All right, this is the kind of tip that I think is going to help a lot of people, because I really don't see anyone ever like going like super big brain like this, and people are always kind of cocky. They're like, well, whatever, better have it, you're not gonna have an Ash, whatever, it's just a 33 point whatever % chance to have anyways. So let's just say you have a hand like this. Do you actually use the emergency? Think about it. Because if you use the emergency and you get Ash, you're left with 4 non-engine cards, and you're under a lot of pressure because you're on top deck mode, constantly trying to draw that core. Otherwise, you're not doing anything proactive. And that's a huge issue. But if I want to, I can ensure that this emergency resolves by setting my 4 cards, not even using emergency yet, because I have the insurance policy that my emergency can resolve through interruptions, like an Ash, which is devastating. And then, in case my opponent tries to go for other plays, I have the Compulse, I have the Ice Dragon's Prison, I have the Punishment, and my last priority, my main priority is not using Solemn Strike against his engine cards. So I'm going to try to use these cards against him, keep this for last, and then on my turn, I'm going to whatever, draw for turn, emergency, Ash, no, Solemn Strike, I get that core search, and now I actually have my engine going. Ash is a once per turn. This is completely unaffected by Ash now. And if I had whatever, a machine duplication or something, you see how this is such a good example of I can really play the game instead of always relying on top deck mode, always relying on luck. Please don't have a hand trap. When you have the cards to play around hand traps, just do it, man. It's safer like that. And of course, if my opponent goes Infirm or like Forbidden Chalice or something, I can also go Compose to bounce back my own core. So I get a follow for next turn, and I get my successful search. So beautiful, man. Cyber Dragons have just so much potential if you actually know how to play them correctly. If not, well, if I just used that emergency and my opponent Ash me, I probably just would have lost on the spot. So that's it for tip number 3. Let's get into tip number 4. All right, this is going to be a huge one, and again, I know a lot of people that are probably not aware of this, but look at my opponent's board. He has Trap Trick, Dragma Punishment, Ice Dragon's Prison, and Dino Miscus. Pretty good, right? I have double Cosmic Cyclone, could have been a twin and just something else, and then I have Shadow Dragon, Rish Shadow Wendy, and Magical Meltdown. Now, technically, I can kind of blind these Cosmic Cyclone on 2 cards, but what if I Cosmic something like, I don't know, like an Artifact not really an Artifact Sanctum, but you kind of get the point. I don't really want to lose a card like a Dimensional Barrier or something, whatever. I just don't really want to blind because I just feel kind of stupid if I hit the cards that don't really scare me too much, like Punishment and Ice Dragon's Prison while I have nothing in the grave, or no monsters yet. I don't really care too much. So what I'm actually going to do now is activate that Magical Meltdown, and again, this is also something that you might actually have to be really scared of if you play a trap deck, because it has kind of a semi-hidden effect. A lot of people just, again, think that it only searches your Alistair, but it does 2 additional things. On top of your fusion spell not being able to be negated by your opponent's cards, well, the activation. The effect can still be negated, I'm pretty sure, but the activation cannot. And also, well, you know, this is going to be even nastier. Just look at this, man. Look at this. I'm going to go normal summon Alistair and search my own vocation, and a lot of people, they only want to stop the Alistair and not the Meltdown, because, you know, if you have Meltdown and it gets stopped and you have Alistair, it's really scary. You know, it's kind of as if you never really lost anything, so it doesn't really scare the opponent. And I'm just gonna go straight for the invocation, and now my opponent does something that is technically kind of reasonable. To a certain extent, it makes sense. You know, if you go Dino Miscus here on the Alistair, what's going to technically happen is that this is going to get banished, this is just going to fizzle, so resolve with no effect, and then either I'm going to have to use the Alistair from my hand and something else in order to fuse, or I'm just not going to be able to fuse at all. But in the situation where you're actually playing a deck like Shadow, this is nasty, because you can still fuse by using the monsters from your hand, so it kind of acts as a Shadow fusion. So that's the worst case scenario, and the best case scenario is that it kind of just does anything that you want. It's a searchable polymerization that can also fuse from the graveyard. Both players' graveyards, by the way. Our graveyard! So my opponent, again, goes Dino Miscus here, and this is the most nasty thing. My opponent is discarding a Hurts, and and look at this very carefully. Magical Meltdown is broken. Look at this. I'm going to fuse using my 2 monsters from my hand in order to summon Shadow Winda. Magical Meltdown reads that when you actually summon your fusion monster, your opponent cannot activate any cards or effects. That means that even his trigger effect, Cyber Dragon Hurts, will not be able to trigger. He cannot do that. So he's negging like crazy because I can use all of my effects. I can do anything that I want on the summon. If I had an App Cologne, I could have used the App Cologne to negate something my opponent controlled. And on top of that, I can actually use all of my Cosmics, all of my Twins, everything. My opponent cannot do a thing. He cannot chain Ice Dragon's Prison to banish that Winda. He cannot use the Trap Trick to try to kind of dodge it and set another trap so he doesn't really neck too much. There's just nothing that he can do. Nothing at all. He just has to sit there, waste all of his cards like nothing, and also on top of that, not even getting hurts as, you know, a compensation. So my opponent literally lost like 5 cards in the process, and I'm doing pretty well. You know, I can actually get back my Alistair. It didn't really hurt me too much. I have a Winda, which is broken, and I have a Shadow Beast, which is going to be insanity next turn. So look at this. Did I really lose anything? And by the way, I had 5 cards in my hand, and I'm going second, so in theory, I should have had a 6th card, but this is just disgusting, man. Magical Meltdown is way more terrifying than you actually think, so just reconsider if you actually want to stop the Magical Meltdown or the Alistair. This is especially a tip if you're playing trap decks, so you actually know what to be scared of, but also a tip if you're playing a deck like Invoked Shadow, so you actually get full advantage and full benefits off of your Magical Meltdown, and it's not just a card that searches Alistair. So I hope the message is clear. Now let's get into the 5th and final tip. Alright, now this actually happened to me at a YCS. It was YCS Portland, and round 1-2, I was so shocked because I played Cyber Dragon Traps, and in my head, nobody's going to side Artifact Lancia against me because I don't really have to banish on my own turn when you think about it, right? All of the cards that banish are usually interruptions during my opponent's turn, like Overflow. I didn't play Overload Fusion because Anaconda was not a thing yet, but yeah, Overflow, and again, there is going to be Trap Trick that also banishes. So I have definitely a few cards, even Dino Miskis. Now, this time, and Ice Dragon's Prison, all of these cards actually banish, and Artifact Lancia has the potential to actually make me go neg 1 if I play incorrectly, but if I play correctly, this Artifact Lancia is going to be a brick for my opponent. So the most ideal way to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Is by ensuring that the hand traps have the least amount of impact against you. So if you don't want to lose to this Artifact Lancia, really simple. All you have to do is when you have a trap card that banishes a card, just use it during your opponent's turn only. Even if it's tempting to actually use it on your own turn, don't do it. So at this point, my opponent is just gonna pass. He cannot use Artifact Lancia on his own turn. Lancia is during opponent's turn only. So I'm going to, whatever, draw for turn. And this is going to be the misplay. I'm going to Trap Trick just so I have more flexibility, quote unquote, because I'm not going to have to Trap Trick during my opponent's turn. But the reason why this is bad is because now my opponent can just go Lancia, and this Trap Trick is just nullified completely. I do have to banish a trap card from my deck in order to set the exact same trap card that I'm trying to set. So you see how I was, you know, just giving a chance to my opponent. I was like, yeah, go ahead, you can Lancia me, but in theory, you have the resources to play around the Lancia. So why would you actually let him kind of break even, you know, trade 1 for 1 when you can actually just ensure that he has more dead cards in the hand, exactly just like Phantasme. You can play through hand traps, just try your best to do it. So this is just one of many examples that will seriously help improve your win rate, make you a better player at the game, make you a pro even, because exactly just like I keep saying, the small details are what makes the biggest difference. I know it's really easy to get 80% of the grade in kind of this situation when you're like trying to play a deck well. It's all you have to do is just learn the basic combos, but after you're done learning anything basic, now you actually have to do 80% of the effort to get the remaining 20% of the results. So that's pretty much the moral of the story. I hope you guys were able to enjoy and learn a thing or two. If you guys have any comments, feedback, or suggestions for like more videos, kind of content like this, definitely let me know in the comment section below, because I'm always really interested to actually know what you guys actually think of all that. So again, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and all the beautiful package, and I will see you next time. Peace.